I really want to read all of these books, but I don't know which one to start with. So I figure I will try a little bit of everything and see which one grabs me the most. A bit more weird. It doesn't really work. And it's just, ugh. Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club and this video, which is going to be a try a chapter video. As usual, when I'm trying to do things, it doesn't really work. I figured that the chapters in these books would be of different lengths, so I decided to see if I could find the book with the longest chapter, like first chapter, and then read about the same number of pages in all of these 4 books. The chapters in the Mare by Angharad, Hampshire are super short. The chapters are like 2 to 4 pages. And then we have Lanny by Max Porter. We have chapter 1 here, but then we don't have chapter 2 until page 114. So that's half the book. But like, I'm looking for a chapter that's about like, I don't know, 10, 20 pages maybe, so that I can match up with the rest of the books. Anyways, then we have Crooked Plow by Itamar Vieira Jr. And this one has 4 pages to a chapter. And then we have White Cat, Black Dog by Kelly Link. And this is a short story collection, so this was already stupid to pick this one. And the first short story is 34 pages. So I have 34 pages or like 2. So these might not have been the most ideal books to do this concept with, but here we are. And I think what I'm gonna do is just set a timer instead and read for, I don't know, let's say 15 minutes in each book, and then see which one I would like to keep reading. So which one do we even begin trying? So I think I'll start with Lanny by Max Porter. This is a short little book. It's a Swedish translation and it's a bit vague. The description of it is a bit vague, but I think it's a bit of horror and also poetic. It's set in a small English village and there's a boy and some kind of a creepy monster kind of character in the woods, I think. It seems a bit creepy and I'm not sure what it's gonna be like, but that's the whole point of doing this test. So yeah, let's read this for 15 minutes. So this book is written in some weird ways. It's got these like poetic little squiggly lines and very few lines on some pages. So this one went pretty quickly and I'm on page 22, which is pretty fast for me in 15 minutes. I'm still intrigued. Nothing has really happened. But there is this dead Papa Toothwort character who is sort of some mystical nature creature who is all kinds of different shapes. He can sort of shift from being the woods to being a little flea and anything in between, it seems. And he likes listening to this little boy, Lanny. He likes listening to all of the sounds and all of the conversations between people, it seems like. And then there are some sections so far with Lanny's dad, Lanny's mom, and then this artist or like sculpture artist called Pete. And Pete and Lanny's mom know each other somehow, and that's pretty much all I know so far. Some sections were a little bit like trying too hard, I felt like, and just trying to sort of merge weird words together that don't really go together. And so then you have to read them and like try to figure out what that word even means, and that just sort of slows down the flow of reading it. I thought it's mostly the monster character parts that are a bit weird like that. So, okay, like I definitely want to read this, but I think I'm not more or less intrigued than before I had started it. It sort of lived up to my expectations, but it's not hooked me. But I am still intrigued to read this. So it hasn't like deterred me from reading it, and it also hasn't hooked me more than I was already hooked by the premise, if that makes sense. I think it does. Okay, next one. Next up we have Crooked Plow by Itamar Vieira Jr. And this is an award-winning Brazilian novel. I think it came out in 2018 and then it was translated last year, so 2023. This is set in rural Brazil. There are poor farmers, I think, and it's magical and social realism. It's about two sisters who find a mysterious knife under their grandmother's bed, and then violence ensues. It seems, you know, a bit weird from the cover illustration, and also the description is a bit mysterious, let's say. So I'm very intrigued to try this for 15 minutes. This is great, and I'm definitely hooked. This one started off right from the first page with this knife and the tongues, and there are these two girls. We're just immediately in their grandmother's bedroom, and the grandmother has a suitcase underneath her bed, and the girls pull it out and they want to look at what's in there. And they pull out all of the clothes and things, and then there's this knife bundled up in some fabric. They're like fighting over who gets to look at it, and then one girl wants to taste it for some reason. So she just puts it into her mouth, and then the other sister sort of yanks it from her hands and puts the knife in her own mouth, and then one of them, I'm not sure which one, cuts her tongue off, and they both have injured their tongues, and like one more than the other, and then like there's blood everywhere and they have to rush to the hospital, and they have never been outside of this plantation that they're on, and they have never seen so many white people or cars running on the same street in both directions, and one of the girls has lost her tongue basically, and they can't put it back. The other one has just an injured tongue, but they both will stay silent. They're like in it together, and it's just ugh. The writing is great. It's just enough description and momentum and action and just beautiful language. I'm very hooked by it and a little grossed out. And, this was a very good start to the book, and I can't wait to read the rest of this. This one, fantastic. Loved it. And also gross. Okay, next up we have White Cat, Black Dog by Kelly Link. This is a short story collection with 7 fairy tales with a modern take and a touch of magic and horror, I think. And the cover art is so beautiful on this one as well. There's a white cat wrapped in a snake that's been cut off by a sword, and also lots of flowers. And then there's a rat, and then there's a black dog at the bottom who's also lying on flowers, and there's some weird things wrapping around. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think there's a fortune cookie. I'm very intrigued to read this one. I've had it for months and I've just been intrigued by the cover art and the description on the back. One of the quotes on the back says, "As intense, absorbing and weird as the best dreams." And I think that sounds very interesting. So yeah, very excited to try 15 minutes of this one. I've made it to page 12 in White Cat, Black Dog, and it's fun. It reads like a fairy tale, and it's got lots of momentum and it's moving forward, and it's fun to read and very easy to read. Like, I love the spacing of the lines in this book. It's very easy to read. I'm reading the first story, which is called The White Cat's Divorce. It starts out with a man who is about 70 years old, and he's super rich. He has everything he could ever want, but he can't stop the passing of time, and so he's growing older. He surrounds himself with young people, and he has like cosmetic surgeries and things, and he swims in a lake every day and things to stay as young as possible, and he has like blood transfusions from teenagers things. And the fact that his 3 sons are adults and growing older, like that's a reminder to him of his own age. So he has these consultants, and they're like, well, you could kill them. And he's like, nah, I don't think I want to do that. And so they come up with this quest for the sons so that they will be away. And so then they will see if that improves this man's well-being. So this man sends his sons on a quest to find a perfect dog for him. And the one who can find the most perfect dog within a year will inherit everything from the father. We follow the youngest son. He is 19 years old, and he sets off and starts collecting dogs, and now he has a big like caravan or something full of dogs, and he has this tiny little dog in his pocket, and then there's a snowstorm and he's out in the snow, and the little dog that he has in his pocket has run away from him, is following this dog so that he won't lose him. But then when he turns around, he can't see his truck anymore because of all of the snow. And so he follows the dog further, and then they find this greenhouse, and it's a greenhouse full of cannabis plants and cats who are dressed in lab coats, standing on their hind legs, wielding clipboards and garden shears and harvesting buckets. And that's where the alarm went off. A lot has happened so far, and I love this, like, there once was an old rich man and he had 3 sons, and it's very like fairy tale format, but the language and the story itself is not the traditional like king and 3 princes and then a dragon at the end of it. You know, it's a bit more weird. I'm loving it. I am having fun so far. There's a little bit of creepiness. He's like hearing voices in the snowstorm, and so yeah, there's something a little bit creepy. It's not scary so far, it's just weird and fun. And yeah, just a story time with weird elements. Oh, and also this is my bookmark for White Cat, Black Dog. It's a fox with a cozy sweater and a scarf and a cup of something warm to drink, and he is also standing on his hind legs and looking very cute, and there's snow around him. So yeah, that was a very fitting bookmark for this book. I will probably finish this story today, but first let's try 15 minutes of the next book. The fourth book I want to try is The Mare by Angharad, Hampshire. This is a fictionalized story based on a true event and a real person called Hermine Braunsteiner. She was the first person to be extradited from the United States for Nazi war crimes. She worked as a guard in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany, and then she escaped after the war and went on to live this normal life where no one knew what she had done, not even her husband. And then one day a journalist comes knocking on her door and everything is revealed. And yeah, that's the premise of this story, and I'm very horrified and fascinated at the same time. I think this is going to be a very heavy read, but also very interesting and a bit of a puzzle to get your head around, like how someone can do the things that she did. And I think that's the whole point of it. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to try this out. So I'm only on page 8 so far, but I'm liking the writing, and the chapters are very short, like I said, and I like that too. We have been introduced to Hermine as a 15-year-old girl. She's working as a maid, and her sister is also a maid. She's the youngest of 7 siblings, and I think that most of them have moved out from their parents' house, and so it's just her and her sister who are still living there. Their father passes away quite suddenly, it seems, from pneumonia and some other illness that I can't pronounce and I don't know what it is. And that's in 1934 in Austria. And the other perspective is from Russell, who is her future husband, and that timeline is in 1957, also in Austria. This is when they meet, so we follow them on their first date, and that's about as far as I have gotten. They're on a little lake rowing a boat, and everything is very nice. She's in her blue sundress and looking very European. He is an American who fought in the Air Force during the Second World War, but he's back in Vienna to visit, and she works there at a hotel, so that's how they meet. I'm really liking the fact that we're getting to know the characters from the start and not just like jumping in straight into the war or anything. I think following Hermine's story from when she's 15 will make it a different experience once she gets to the concentration camps compared to what it would be like if we were just like jumping in there from the start. There are a few quotes at the start of the book, and the first one is by Zygmunt Bauman, Modernity and the Holocaust. And it says, "The most frightening news brought about by the Holocaust and by what we learned of its perpetrators was not the likelihood that this could be done to us, but the idea that we could do it." And yeah, I think that's what intrigues me with this story, is that we're following the perpetrator and how that could come about. Before the actual chapters start, there's a little text in cursive, which is when the journalist arrives. I don't know, should I read the first? I'll just read the first little thing. The knock on the door changed everything. Until then, we were happy. We knew who we were. You've got the wrong person, I told him. My wife is gentle and kind. She wouldn't hurt a fly. After he left, we sat side by side on the sofa and I held you tightly and you sobbed into my neck. Your shoulders heaved up and down and your tears soaked my collar. This will be the end of me, you whimpered. I only did what everyone else did back then. I was no different. You have to believe me. I've done nothing wrong. So that's how the story starts, and then we meet Hermine at age 15 in 1934, and then we meet Russell in 1957 as he meets Hermine after the war. All of that, and I'm only on page 8, and so yeah, I am still very much wanting to read this book. I think that the first part that I read is the hook part, and that is done very well, and then in the next few pages we're just getting into it, and yeah, I definitely want to keep reading this as well. Okay, so now I've read 15 minutes in each book, and where does that leave us? I think the one that hooked me the least was Lanny by Max Porter. I still want to read this, but it's not the one that grabbed me the most. White Cat, Black Dog definitely was fun, and since it is a short story, I can just read one story to start with. I don't think that I'm gonna read the entire book in one sitting anyway, so yeah, I definitely want to read this short story and finish that and see what it's like. Crooked Plow was a very intriguing start to the story, and I definitely want to keep reading this. I can't wait to see where it's going. It's kind of like the premise that's on the, like in the description of this book, that has already happened, so I'm not sure what's next and like where this is gonna go, but I am still very intrigued to read it, and it lived up to my expectations in terms of quality and like the writing, so yeah, I definitely want to read this one. And then we have the Mare, and this was definitely gripping right from the start, and I think this is the one that I'm most keen to read right now. I want to read all of these obviously, but this is the one that hooked me the most, and I'm not surprised by that, but like I'm very pleased with all of these. Like I think these are all very unique books. None of them read like, you know, a regular novel. The most regular one so far is Crooked Plow, and like it's not regular at all. So yeah, I'm very excited about all of these, but I think the one that hooked me the most was the Mare, and I think that part of it is because I know that there's going to be more things coming, and so there's been that hook, and I still have a sense of what there is left to discover. I still have questions. I know that we're going to see Hermine working in a concentration camp, so I'm very curious to see how we're going to get there and what's going to happen and how everything is going to play out afterward with her husband and everything. So yeah, I don't think anyone is surprised, but this was a very fun little exercise to do to just try them out and get a little sample of each of the books and just see what it's like actually reading them, because sometimes I can just get these very strong ideas in my head of what I think a book will be, and then when I start reading it, it's not that at all, and that can be a good thing, or it's a disappointment. I'm not disappointed in any of these, still very intrigued. I'm just the most intrigued to read The Mare and the first short story in White Cat, Black Dog, and then Crooked Plow, and then also Lanny at some point. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about what these books are like, at least the start of them. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're having a fantastic day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. so I figured I would try the first chapter in each of them and see which one grabs me the most. Okay, that's stupid.